Hi everyone, Tom Anderson, day 24 of 100 Days of Thankfulness. Today we're talking about the importance of forgiveness, and I'll be talking about the 8th miracle that occurred to me in 1993. And I'm also going to talk about why I'm so thankful for my friend Tony Akehurst. So yesterday I was talking about how there were two things that after I received the Holy Spirit that were immediately changed about me. The first one I covered yesterday, which was the tears of joy, was something that was a little confusing to me for a while. The second one made a lot more sense, and that's what I'm going to talk about today. So what I noticed, and I need to describe a little bit about the way I was before I received the Holy Spirit. I had this interesting ability to remember past conversations, especially when they were emotionally charged conversations, in particular arguments. So if I was ever in an argument with someone, I could remember almost word for word what was said, and then what I would do with that, unfortunately, in the relationships I was in, is I would often use that later as ammunition fired back in a later argument. Saying, well, so back then you said this, and I said this, and you said that, and that kind of thing. So after I received the Holy Spirit, I lost that ability. It was almost like God was saying, you don't need that anymore. That's not important. And that helped me to, I think, to be able to forgive people. Because I think what happens when you don't forgive, especially, if you're in a love relationship with someone and you're having arguments, Karen and I, we have arguments. It's not to say that arguments are bad. Arguments aren't necessarily something to be avoided. Arguments happen because there's a problem. And in the case of Karen and I, it's typically where one or the other or both of us are just going through a rough time in life and not feeling that we're being supported enough by the other person. It's simply as simple as that. So it's not to say that we don't love each other or that we don't support each other, but there's, we're human. There's times that, we're more so concerned about what we've got going on, that we're not paying the right enough attention to the other person to really just be sensitive to their needs as well. So unfortunately, if you don't have arguments, that can be even worse, because what ends up happening is you just bottle that up, and then you end up forming a resentment over time. So it's almost better to just get it out so that the other person, especially if it's someone that you love, they know, how you're feeling. They should know how you're feeling at all times. And then for the other person to, of course, be supportive. So not to say that I'm an expert in that, but it's definitely to not have this ability to, like blow a current argument out of proportion by bringing in old events is huge, because all that was happening by doing that, by bringing those old arguments into the current argument, is it was just basically bringing those old resentments out in the open, and then holding on to those resentments is just, it can be very destructive. It's more harmful, the person that's holding on to these resentments, it's more harmful for that person than it is for the person that's being resented. So it's just not good for you to hold on to that stuff. Get rid of it. Forgive them. So now, how to forgive? This can be really challenging for a lot of people. I need to share with you a little bit about Tony. Now, Tony is someone that he's a friend of mine that we met through another mutual friend, and he reminded me a lot of myself, like especially when I ran into Casey again, where I had all these questions about God, but I didn't know where to turn for the answers. And when I first met Tony, that was a lot where he was at. He was definitely seeking, just like I am a seeker too. I'm always seeking answers to a lot of these questions. And so, we basically decided, let's get together for pancake breakfast every Sunday. We ended up doing that for several months, basically every other Sunday, getting together for pancake and just talking about God. And just, I think it was just a good conversation because, he was learning from me and I was learning from him. And I guess what I want to share with you today is what I learned from him, in particular about this area of forgiveness. And what now, even though we both had a lot in common in terms of, we both loved to talk about God, and we both were seeking answers to, life's deeper questions. There is something that was very different about us, and that had to do with our upbringing. Tony had a much rougher upbringing than I did, and so he had much more than me. He had plenty of reasons to hold on to resentments as it relates to that. And so it was interesting to, even discover that about him because, from the time that I first met him, he has been someone that has, he's always spoken graciously of everyone. He's never had a bad word to say about anyone. If he ever had anything bad to say, it was always about himself. And I thought that was really neat, and I wish I could be more like that. And so he kind of was teaching me by example, but then, when it came out and I was asking him about it, and he would say things like, really the key to forgiveness is realizing that you're not responsible for what anyone else might do or say to you. You're only responsible for what you do, for what you say, for the mistakes you make. And so if you're, it's really easy when you're going through all kinds of problems in life to blame everyone else around you. But it's really hard to look in the mirror and face the truth that really, that person in the mirror, that's the one who's really to blame in most of these situations. And so he taught me that, and I just want to thank him for, teaching me that, because I think that's the key to forgiveness, realizing that we do have to look in the mirror. We do have to accept responsibility for our own decisions. I'm not saying that everything that bad ever happens to you is your own fault. That's not at all what I'm saying. But how we respond to it is totally in our control. And if someone is having a bad day, just accept that and accept them and say, you don't even have to say I forgive you, but you should forgive them, because it can be destructive to yourself if you don't forgive them. So that's it for today. Thanks again to Tony Akehurst.